Evening. Welcome everyone to Visual Radio. Visual Radio Live, actually. We have two shows. One is studio, and about a year and a half ago we started this live show, and I am happy to introduce to you Mr. Scratch from the Boston Babydolls. Hello, Mr. Scratch.
Hello, Joe.
I've been promising Mr. Scratch to be on the show for like 5 years now.
It's about right.
Here we are.
Here we are.
That we were that backlog. We had that many guests, Scratch.
Oh, it's terrific that you're so popular.
Gilbert Gottfried and Gallagher, and they all came in here and sat where you're sitting.
Well, it doesn't seem to be any banana or a watermelon on the seat.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, Gallagher is in the news. He's trending on Yahoo because he had a third heart attack.
Oh,
So good thoughts out to Gallagher.
sure.
Funny guy. You just came back from New York, and
I did. New York City.
take my hat off to you for driving.
Well, I had to be here.
So, 5 hours, 6?
It was close to 6 hours. The traffic getting out of New York City was pretty bad.
It's always a gamble.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. But I'm actually from New York City originally. Don't hold that against me, Boston. I grew up there.
So, do you like the Jets or the Giants?
Actually, I'm not a big sports fan. So, I mean, I think if I had to pick one, I think probably the Jets. But
Tim Tebow and Mark Sanchez, it'll be an interesting, they have a name for that when there's two quarterbacks, quarterback feud or something.
sure.
I forget the name. I should know these things, but it's my age.
Oh. Well, you
People
got-
watch me week after week, my memory deteriorates.
You said we got a sports guy calling in tonight, right?
Sometimes
Sometimes.
Johnny Byers calls in.
Well, you can ask him when he calls.
Yeah, there you go. So, how was New York? Did you have fun?
I did. I mean, it was a whirlwind tour. Left Boston yesterday morning about 5:30 in the morning, and
I've
was
been there.
back in time for dinner.
I just did it, same thing as you. It
Yeah.
was 4:30. The cab got me at 5, and it was March 2nd, Lou Reed's birthday.
Huh?
So I
Happy
sent
birthday,
Lou
Lou.
a birthday card. Yeah,
Yeah.
70.
Wow.
And then the next day was Buzzy Linhart's birthday, and he's a frequent co-host. Do you know Buzzy?
I don't.
Got to have friends.
Oh, sure. Another song.
He wrote that for Bette Midler. Worked with Carly Simon. I might see about getting Buzzy a book. So it was his birthday on the 3rd, so send everyone birthday cards from New York. We're going to talk to you, but let's see. Hello. Johnny Byers.
How are you?
Good. Say hi to Mr. Scratch.
Hi, Mr. Scratch. How
Hey,
are you?
hey, Johnny, very
The
good.
name you were trying to think of is Tim Tebow and Mike Sanchez.
No, I knew the names, Johnny.
Oh.
What's the term? Not a...
Quarterback controversy.
Thank you.
There we go.
I called it a quarterback feud. Scratch knew that you would
Well,
know.
It could be that way too, because the fact of the matter is, it would be a feud between the Sanchez fans and the Tebow fans.
So, Johnny, have you ever seen burlesque?
No, I've heard about it though.
All right, so Mr. Scratch has a burlesque troupe, and I want them to do the Super Bowl next year.
Oh, the Super Bowl. Yeah, we'd be
I
happy
don't
to.
think so.
You work that out for
I
us.
don't think so. They just took a gamble on Madonna this year, and you think they're going to put a burlesque
That was
show in the
burlesque.
Super Bowl?
In the true sense of burlesque. Well, a couple years back, Janet Jackson did some impromptu burlesque at the
That's
Super Bowl.
thing. Remember, but now for people like me and you guys, you would like in the years past you've had Bruce Springsteen, you've had Paul McCartney do the Super Bowl, you had U2 do the Super Bowl, and a couple of the older acts from the 50s. Now that we're getting into. Now that they're taking a gamble on the younger acts, because remember this now, in 2014, the Super Bowl is going to be in New York, and they'll want a younger demographic coming in for the halftime show. So this is going to bring the P. Diddy's and all those people out, and they wanted to do this so-called test with Madonna to see how this would work. Now, if it works, we'll see more of that, because then in a couple of more years, the Super Bowl is probably going to end up being in Nashville, Tennessee, where the Tennessee Titans playing. You know, it's in Tennessee, country music.
Right. But you saying that they want to bring out the younger folks? You don't think the older folks like country music?
They try with the Super Bowl halftime show. They try to basically kowtow to both parties, both younger and older. Now, of course, the Janet Jackson thing helped them because for years after that, for a number of years after that, they were bringing in the older acts to sort of to smooth over the hurt feelings. Because remember, there was a shot of CBS getting fined for what happened.
Yeah,
a major fine.
As though it were CBS's fault.
Oh yeah, but it went over CBS's airwaves, so it was a CBS program. So CBS is the carrier of the game. So naturally, they were going to get hit with the major fine until Janet Jackson first said it was a mistake, and then weeks later she said she deliberately did it because of she had a concert tour coming up and she wanted to sell more tickets.
Well, you know, they say that there's no such thing as bad publicity, right, Johnny?
Of course, there isn't. I mean, look at the publicity that the Madonna got doing the Super Bowl this year.
Sure.
And it went quite well, except for one little foul-up where that one singer that was performing with the bird, I guess it was.
Oh.
And they didn't like that. But otherwise, the performance went well, and there's a possibility that you may see more mainstream acts that show up for the younger demographic.
Well, I don't know if Madonna's there for the.
They're going to really get a younger demographic is to put the Super Bowl on early enough. Same with all the Major League Baseball. Same thing with them. If they want to get a younger demographic and get younger fans watching, they got to have the Super Bowl on at an earlier time so that it ends at an earlier time.
Yeah. What do you think, Johnny? They're going to start doing a halftime show at the World Series?
No. In other words, they've been talking for years about having the World Series games start earlier than 8 o'clock because they want a younger demographic. They want the young kids to be able to watch the games. But the network who runs the broadcast wants to show the game after 8 o'clock.
Sure.
And so there's a fight between the parties that want to see earlier games and the party that doesn't.
Hey, Johnny.
Yes.
Are there any sports games on tonight?
Yeah, the Bruins are playing tonight. I don't know. I'll check the score on that. I know the Celtics played last night, and they had another tight win. The Red Sox played today, and they lost.
Because we're going to have, I have to really get back to scratch.
Okay.
But I appreciate the update, man.
It's 0-0 in the second inning. In the second period.
All right, thanks, Johnny Byers.
Nice
That was
guy.
he's a great guy. He calls in every week, and he's John from Medford on 98.5 and WEEI.
Okay.
So on those two sports channels, he's
Yeah.
pretty notorious.
Sure.
In a good way.
Yeah, right.
And when he ran for mayor, they both endorsed him, both radio stations endorsed him for mayor. But here we are. So this is a little fun that we have on visual radio.
I'm looking forward to it.
So how many years has the Boston Babydolls have you been in existence?
The Boston Babydolls are going on their 7th birthday in their current incarnation.
So how many incarnations have you had?
Well, prior to that, the myself and the two principals, Mina Murray and Betty Blaze, we worked together, but not under the Boston Babydolls name. So the first appearance of the Boston Babydolls was actually just after Hurricane Katrina. Was a big benefit at Axis on Lansdowne Street, now gone, now a House of Blues. We raised several $1,000s for the victims of Hurricane Katrina.
Very nice. So
Yeah.
that was your first.
That was the first big public appearance. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And a good cause.
And a good cause. Well, you know, burlesque in New Orleans will have a tight and twisty history. Blaze Starr, who's one of the burlesque legends, was involved with the governor of Louisiana, Huey Long, for a long time. Made a movie about it with Paul Newman.
Was that around the time of Mae West?
Well, let's see. May's earlier than that. I mean, May's heyday was the golden age of Hollywood, was the 30s and 40s, and Blaze Starr is still alive. So Blaze's affair with Huey Long was in the early 60s.
Okay.
So.
Because there was some governor that got Mae West out of jail. I forget who.
Oh, yeah.
One of those stories. But
Yeah.
we both like Myra Breckinridge, which had Mae West and Raquel Welch.
Yep. Mae West towards the end of her career, Raquel Welch towards the beginning of her career. Yeah.
Yeah, because she had done the 5 million years BC, I think, already.
Yeah, sure.
I have a nice little Raquel Welch DVD box set that I reviewed. And it's got Myra, which was a lost classic for a while.
Really?
Well, not really a classic, a
No,
lost
but
cult classic.
lost cult classic, sure.
Yeah, but, John Huston should have directed. He starred in it.
Yeah.
It was a mishmash, but Mae West, as you said outside, we were talking earlier, she was really kind of like for burlesque.
Sort of a spiritual godmother. Yeah, she didn't. I mean, she wasn't a burlesque performer, but being a strong female character, comedian, very overt sexually. I mean, she was a tease, even though she never took her clothes off. So there's a lot of kinship between her work and classic American burlesque.
The queen of the casting couch in Myra Breckinridge. She was the woman who was the queen of the casting couch. In his first film role, Tom Selleck, a bed in the office. She goes, I do a little night work sometimes. And the curtain falls on her. And Farrah Fawcett's first role, I believe.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Farrah Fawcett and Tom Selleck.
Right. Farrah Fawcett was then, right, she went on to be in Logan's Run in a little part, but I think that was after Myra Breckinridge.
And as I said to you earlier, the last role of William Hopper, the
Right,
cousin
sure.
of Dennis Hopper,
Yep.
who was, of course, Paul Drake in the Perry Mason series.
Yeah, right?
He's a corrupt judge that Myra is sitting down and
Yeah.
negotiating with, and he's smoking a joint,
Uh-huh.
which I think he keeps in his Bible, if I recall.
I think so. I think so.
Poor William Hopper, 55 was too
No,
young.
too young. Too young. Handsome man. I remember the Perry Masons. Very, good-looking guy.
Striking image.
Yeah.
He was a striking investigator, PI, and Raymond Burr was flawless. And
Yeah, sure.
Barbara Hale as Della Street. The three of them had the chemistry.
They did. They really did. They really did.
When you have this great knowledge of these films and TV shows, do you ever broadcast things behind you, put images?
We do try and mix media every once in a while. We also, we take our inspiration from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. We say that the Boston Babydolls try and recreate a golden age of burlesque that never really existed. But so we're drawing from the glamour years of Hollywood in the 30s and the 1940s, the World War II era, the pinup era, and the 1950s into the greaser era, maybe even into a little bit of the early 60s, a little bit of go-go in there.
Now, how risque do the ladies get?
Well, nobody gets naked.
Okay.
And it's a little bit of an attitude more than anything else. I mean, our dancers, the stripteasers, strip down to full coverage panties and pasties.
Okay.
But it's, there's a lot of burlesque in the world. It's very popular these days. And
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, no, there's a big burlesque revival. People like Dita Von Teese, who's the spokesperson for Cointreau and for Mac Glam Cosmetics, and a lot of the popular television shows. To every once in a while have a burlesque episode, or where the characters go in and they're talking in a burlesque club. It was on. Gossip Girl, and there was a bunch of the modern popular shows, burlesque stuff. There's even a burlesque reality television show in Canada. So
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And with the internet, you people developed in the age of the internet,
sure,
Katrina. So
sure, yeah.
you have your website, which is
BostonBabydolls.com.
That's easy enough.
Yep, sure.
And when was your last Boston gig, and when's the next one?
Well, we do. We function like a theater troupe. So we do 4 major productions a year. And then in between, we do a lot of smaller stuff and corporate events, things like that. We're actually, so to answer your first question first, our last show closed on Valentine's Day and was in Davis Square at the new Davis Square Theater, which is the old Jimmy Tingle Theater. It's a little nice, literally underground theater, about 150 seats down underneath the saloon. It's owned by the same guys who own the Foundry.
Near the McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly. Right in the heart of Davis Square.
I thought that was owned by the Davis Square Theater. I was just my perception because I was walking by. They have movies there, right?
Well, the Somerville Theater is the big one that's across the street.
Right.
And the Davis Square Theater is down under a terrific restaurant called the Foundry.
But they show movies there too, I think.
I mean, they do everything there. I don't think they show movies. They're mostly a live theater. They show movies at the Somerville Theater, but the Davis Square Theater is mostly live these days.
Okay.
And they do a little jazz and a little comedy, but also they do big expanded shows. Like us, we were there for 3 weeks.
There's another club like 2 doors down, right?
There's there's a coffee house like 2 doors down. Diesel, the coffee house, is a couple doors down, and the Burren is there.
The Burren, that's
the
the one I'm
Burren
thinking of.
does live music in their back room. Yeah. So
I'm
this
leaving
is
the Burren because
Yeah.
I saw Matt Turk, from
Okay.
New York, friend of mine. He was playing there, so I went to see him on a Sunday night, and I walked out, and there was like this little theater with a door,
point arrow, white arrow pointing down. Yep, it's right next door to the Burren.
and I'm sure they had like a movie playing.
Nope, wasn't a movie.
Well,
But I mean, they have a marquee.
So that's
But
where I was confused.
But that's why you think it was a movie. But it was a
Straighten that.
live show.
Great.
Live show. Yep.
There's a lot of activity in Davis Square because across the street you have that where the Duke and the Driver's drummer used to play. Mark Highlander used to play across the street, the Joshua Tree.
Sure. Yep.
So they had a cover band. But these places get packed. And then you get Johnny D's down the street.
Johnny D's. Yeah. Sure.
So
Sure,
they
and there's live music. So downstairs, there's a place called under the Foundry. There's a place just called Saloon, and they do live music in there every once in a while. And behind Saloon is this charming little theater that does everything from Shakespeare to out of town rock and roll bands to comedy nights.
So you go down to the saloon, and then behind it there's a stage.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a separate space, but you reach it by going down to Saloon. Yeah,
So it's owned by the same people.
it is owned by the same people. Yeah,
And because the Burren has a room in the back.
in the back. Yeah, exactly.
Where they
exactly.
have open mic night.
Yeah, well, they do all sorts of stuff back there. Sure. Yeah, a lot of Irish music. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting melting pot in there. And now you got
Sure.
the Rosebud too.
Right. Sure. Yeah, they've got a room behind them as well. Yeah, Davis. There's all sorts of stuff going on in Davis Square. Some great stores there. Some great vintage clothing, which. I don't think I'm actually wearing any vintage clothing at the moment, but I frequently do. There's a place called Artifactory that I like very much in Davis Square.
I don't know it. I go to the Goodwill, look for books.
Well, the Goodwill's a great place to buy vintage clothing. And there's one of those in Davis Square, too.
Yeah, well, there's books and
Yeah.
records, but they're like reorganizing down there, because there used to be a lot of vinyl records.
Yeah, sure.
Um, So we're getting a little off topic, but
Yeah.
the Rosebud, I saw Andy Chernoff of the Dictators there, so
Yeah.
they're bringing in names.
Lot
from-
of good music there. Yeah.
So Valentine's Day was downstairs behind the saloon?
Was behind the saloon. We did a show called Unlucky in Love, and we were there for 3 weeks from the latter part of January through Valentine's Day. Did 13 shows. Sold out a bunch of them. Had a great time doing it.
Do you videotape any of them?
Sure. And you can see video clips of us up online. You go searching on YouTube for Boston Babydolls, and you'll find stuff.
Oh, cool. So 13 shows is a lot of work.
13 shows is a lot of work.
How many
There's a lot
hours?
of work.
How long is the
It's
show?
about 2 hours with a 15-minute intermission.
Wow.
Unlucky in Love was a lot of fun because we had a live band. It was a pickup band, 4 very talented guys. Let's see, Matt Rivero, who's mostly a session musician. Nate Arano from the Nate Arano Nextet. Carl Groman, who plays with a bunch of different people. I think most recently Koepp, and our bassist, who's going to kill me, to whose name I am
Regular basis?
upright bassist.
It's called Bluesheimers. That's what Danny Klein of the Jay Giles Band told me.
Go Bluesheimers? Okay, good.
And you notice, if I bring my notes,
Yeah.
yeah, I interviewed Joseph Kahn yesterday, the director of Aerosmith and Beyonce, Lady Gaga. He does all these great videos, U2, Eminem.
Yeah.
And the questions in front of me, and then I had a great question from him about music videos from back in the day, and it like kept. I had to ask it 3 times before it came to me. It's like it's just part of being.
Alan Euler. Sorry, Alan.
See?
Forgive me. There we go.
I helped
Comes
you by
back.
doing that.
Comes back. Thanks very much for the stall, Joe.
Yeah, it's just part of the whole thing.
Yep.
So you've got a 4-piece band, and they
Four-piece
did all
band.
13 shows.
They did all 13 shows. Yeah,
Did
absolutely.
they open up with their own music?
No, it's all we did all classic stuff, and we had 3 singers, one of whom is also a dancer with in the Boston Babydolls troupe, but two singers, and they would sort of rotate. It was always a lead singer and 2 backup singers, but it rotated who the lead singer was depending on the song, and they did classic stuff like "My Baby Just Cares for Me" and. We did "Is You Is" or "Is You Ain't My Baby," which was the closer, which I sang. I'm trying to think. "Let's Misbehave," "Ain't Misbehavin'." So all sorts. I mean, like I said, we tend to pick our stuff from the
Even
20s,
bluesy.
30s, and 40s. Yeah, a little Tin Pan Alley here and there. Some very soulful stuff. "Round Midnight" and "Someone to Watch Over Me." We have a singer named Alyssa Coates who has a terrific emotive voice, and Imani Roach who used to sing with Bobby McFerrin and traveled with the Grateful Dead for a while. I mean, as a singer, not
Right.
not as a groupie.
But and these are all the Boston Babydolls now.
Well, the singers are
Right.
contractors, right? The band is contractors. So the Boston Babydolls are Mina Murray, who founded the troupe with me, Betty Blaze, who was the first member of the Boston Babydolls and is our lead choreographer, Devora Darling, who's a classically trained ballet dancer, Evie Symkus, who is incredibly limber, very active, enthusiastic dancer, Brigitte Bissou, who used to run the Tufts burlesque troupe. There's a burlesque troupe at Tufts University, and the newest member of the troupe is Stella Diamond, who is also a vocalist.
Stella Diamond.
Yep.
Did you ever hear of Ruby Starr from the Black Oak, Arkansas band?
It sounds like a burlesque dancer.
Right. These names are great.
Yeah,
Ruby
no.
Starr, Mae West.
Mae
you
West, sure.
know. Even Raquel Welch. Raquel. Her husband was Pat Welch.
Right, sure.
But it's
Well,
a
there,
great
there
name.
are people out there. I mean, the classic Boston burlesque dancer back in the day was a woman named Ann Corio, and that was her name, right? She didn't use a stage name. She didn't use a fake name. And I think also back in a lot these days, stage names are fairly stagey sounding. Right? Devora Darling and Betty Blaze. But in the 40s and 50s, in the golden age of burlesque, there were plenty of people that had names that could have been real names. Georgia Southern and Lois DeFee and Lily St. Cyr, right? Were all Sally Rand, right? What was her stage name? The great fan dancer.
Ah. Yeah. And where does Gypsy Rose Lee fall into all this?
Gypsy Rose Lee is one of the great burlesque dancers of all time, but also not her real name. Rose Louise Hovick was her real name.
Now, many people think of her as a stripper.
She was a stripper. Well, burlesque is we make the distinction between a stripper and a strip teaser, and Gypsy Rose Lee was the teasiest of the strip teasers.
Ah.
Part of the joke, of course, is I think partially these days the distinction is how much do you take off. When you say stripper, you think of a gentleman's club, right? And women who get completely naked. And of course, in burlesque, there is no nudity. But also, it's with a stripper, her job is to get naked as quickly as possible, and with a strip teaser, her job is to get naked as slowly as possible. Well, and of course she doesn't actually get naked, but to get to the end of the act as slowly as possible.
I was doing one of my columns,
Yeah.
a writer, and I was at Cantone's, must have been 1978, 79, and terrific woman on stage with these incredible stage moves. And her brother, Ted, was on guitar with a really nice psychedelic sound behind her. Even though she was doing more of her hard rock, Ted added a really nice psychedelic tinge. And John Butcher worked with her and some of the big names in Boston
yeah.
who were on her album, Hirsch Gardner. And she, I wrote in my column, probably the best stage moves I've seen in Boston. Well, it turns out she was working at these gentlemen clubs during the day.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, we got very friendly, and then she comes over to my house, she goes, "You gotta come see me tonight." And I go, I'm not gonna go to your show. "It's only flesh." I said, "You're a friend. I just cannot go see a friend go and take her clothes off. I just can't do it."
We have some of that as well, right? There are people who are who are friends of the Boston Babydolls, who support us, who tell their friends about our shows, who think what we're doing is terrific, but who don't want to come and say, which, is understandable.
You can understand that.
Yeah, sure. It's not for everybody.
I never saw her take off her clothes. In fact, she let me stay at her house in New York when she moved to New York, and I'd bring friends over, we'd crash at her pad. And it would just be different if I was seeing her naked.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
You keep it
Yep.
professional.
Yep.
And to her, well, it was professional because it was a professional day gig.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
So she didn't understand that it didn't compute for me.
Right, sure. Sure,
'Cause
no,
I just-
I understand completely.
You
I
know,
understand completely.
But, this is cool stuff for people to know because I'm really not well versed in burlesque. And
It's a niche.
But you're part of this Boston scene.
Yeah.
In New York, did you do this?
But in New York, no, I didn't. I got into burlesque. I've been an actor all my life. I trained in New York. I actually came up to Boston to continue my training. And after I had been in Boston for a while, I got involved in a Commedia dell'arte troupe. And Commedia dell'arte is a form of improvisational theater that goes back to about Shakespeare's day. And this Commedia dell'arte troupe that I was involved with was, as I say, critically successful. That is, the critics loved our stuff because it was smart and obscure, and you had to be a theater geek to really get it. But of course, because there are only so many theater geeks, even in a city like Boston, we didn't make a lot of money. And one day, there was a burlesque show at the Coolidge Corner Theater, midnight at the Coolidge Corner Theater. And I thought, well, burlesque is actually sort of the great-great-granddaughter of Commedia dell'arte. So I went to see it, and it was packed at midnight, packed. And I thought, well, because I'm not very bright, if these people can fill this theater with their obscure, dying form of theatrics, surely I can fill this theater with my obscure, dying form of theatrics. And a couple of years later, because it takes me a while to pick up on the clue, I was in London with Betty Blaze and Mina Murray, and we were trying to settle on a show that the three of us could agree upon. London has wonderful theater. And Betty, who studies a wide variety of ethnic dances, including Indian dance, wanted to go and see Bollywood Nights, which was an Andrew Lloyd Webber show that I don't think ever made it to the United States. And Mina, who is a huge Freddie Mercury fan, wanted to go and see We Will Rock You, which is the Queen musical. And
There was one, okay.
Yeah, no, they're big. And I wanted to go and see Woman in Black, which was a gothic mystery with a ghost story. And so none of us could agree on anything. And there was this show called Immodesty Blazes Burlesque. And I said, how about some burlesque? So the ladies and I went to see this show, and it was terrific. And pretty much by the end of our time in London, we said, we're going to start doing that when we get back to Boston.
Now, was Betty's name Blaze before that show?
No, it wasn't. She actually took her stage name from, she was so impressed with Immodesty Blaze. And about 6 months, maybe a year, less than a year, after we first started performing, we were out in Las Vegas as there's a big burlesque weekend that goes on there every year. And
of course.
And Immodesty Blaze was there, and we went over and said hello, and I introduced Betty, who was very, very shy. I mean, and Betty's usually not very shy. And I said, Betty, tell her your last name. And she said, it's Blaze. And Immodesty said, that's wonderful. For me? So, and we actually, Immodesty and I became very good friends. She's very, very, very popular in England. Very, very popular.
Now, Woman in Black, you're into the Gothic and stuff, hence your name?
I suppose. My Scratch, for the audience members who don't know, is the name the devil uses in The Devil and Daniel Webster. And there are two reasons why I use it. One of which is a little bit the appearance. And the other is I'm pretty serious, as anyone who does business with me knows, I'm very serious about contracts. If I make you a promise, it is carved in stone. And if you make me a promise, you better keep it.
Carved in stone.
Yeah.
So Mr. Scratch keeps things very black and white.
Very black and white.
Women in black and white.
Yeah, right.
Very, very cool. So do you like The Devil and Daniel Webster?
Oh, sure. A piece of classic American literature. There's also a lot of people don't know this. There's a follow-up. There's another Daniel Webster called Daniel Webster and the Sea Serpent, also by Stephen Vincent Benet.
Huh.
It's written in the 1800s.
And so Daniel Webster and the Sea Serpent.
Yeah.
So
Another short story where Daniel goes and I think there's a sea serpent that has swum in through the harbor and up the Charles and won't let any ships go one way or the other. And it's not as good as The Devil and Daniel Webster. But if you want to find out how it ends, go read it yourself. I'm sure your local library has it.
And did he take this from the Daniel Webster?
Yeah, that's the historic Daniel Webster, the lawyer.
So he just decided to make him a fictional character?
Sure, why not? So I guess I'm a fictional character too.
We all are.
We all are.
We're all in the Matrix.
Right.
I like the Merovingian here.
Yeah.
Matrix.
Sure, yeah.
He offers Neo some wine. And Neo said, no, thank you. But of course, everything here is just for appearance. There is no wine. There is
of
no
course
cookies.
not. Right, yeah.
I don't think people got when the Oracle was baking her cookies.
That there weren't any cookies?
Oh, no, they were cookies. Don't you know what they were?
No.
She's giving Neo cookies. What does a computer have on it?
Oh, very nice.
That's
very nice. That's very clever. Yeah.
Very clever because, have a cookie.
Yeah.
And she's tracing him. It's a trace program.
Very nice.
And what was Morpheus doing? He put a trace program. So, poor Neo is like, there's the Oracle, who is she's a machine, but she's kind of, I'm on your side and you got to figure out if I am or not.
Right, sure.
And then there's Morpheus, who's not allegedly not a program. And then there's people saying, well, maybe when they get out of the Matrix, that other world that they thought was reality was a second Matrix.
Right, yes. I've heard that as well.
Did you see the 13th floor? 13th floor was a period piece with Craig Bierko. And I think it was Paul Van Hooveren. Do I have the guy who did Total Recall? So they did a real period piece, and I'm watching it. I'm saying, like, this is fascinating, because the Matrix came out, and they both came out at the same time, and they were both the same idea. A great character actor created this computer where they could go in and they had characters. And then it turned to find out there was a second layer, so that the people who thought they were in the real world were actually in a second Matrix, if you will. But the Matrix was like 2 weeks later. Yeah. So these guys got to be on top of each other.
A couple of pieces of classic science fiction that are like that. There's a Keith Laumer book called, I think it's called Night of Dreams, but it's Knight, Night of Dreams, which starts off as a very pulp fiction, sort of Dashiell Hammett, Sam Spade type of, except weird things keep sort of happening, and we realize that the hero is in a suspended animation. It's all happening in his head. It's not in the 1940s. And Kim Newman has another one called something like The Mayor of Nightmare Town or something like that. Kim Newman, a great British author. And this is another similar one where they have to send a private detective in after a serial killer who's escaped into the machine. So strong stuff. I mean, it's a classic idea.
Hermetic philosophy,
right.
that since you can't add anything to the all, because the all already is the all, and if the all creates, what is it creating, since it already is the all?
Sure.
And the only creation could be the imagination of the all. So that's where we're drifting. Since the all is infinite, like a computer that can never be erased, we're just swimming around in this eternal, and what's the difference between a personality or a computer? So
These days, getting to be less and less.
we're learning at least about spirituality from our computers, I think, which takes us way off the track of when's the next show.
Well, so the next event that's going on is actually every year. In addition to the festival in Vegas, I thought, why should Vegas have all the fun? And I produce an annual convention, burlesque festival called the Great Burlesque Festival, the Great Burlesque Exposition, which this year is April 6th through 8th. And it's
coming right up.
Coming right up, yeah. Not this weekend, but the following weekend. It's at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Cambridge. It's www.burlesqueexpo.com. There are 3 nights of shows. On Saturday, there are free drop-in classes if anybody ever wanted to try burlesque. An art
What
show.
time are the free classes?
They run from noon till about 6 p.m.
All things free we can talk about on public access.
Every hour.
You know the rules here.
Yeah, sure.
But all things free we can talk about. So
Absolutely.
every hour, people can drop in at the Hyatt.
Drop in at the Hyatt. There are free classes. There's also a free art show with burlesque-inspired artworks and a costume exhibit of classic burlesque costumes. And actually, once the expo closes, we're taking some of the pieces from that costume exhibit and adding a bunch more historical stuff and taking it over to the West End Museum, which is over by North Station.
Is that Des Desmond's?
No, it's
West End Museum. I don't
the
know.
West End Museum. I think it's thewestendmuseum.org. I'm pretty sure. The West End Museum, of course, is a small local museum dedicated to what they call the greatest neighborhood this side of heaven, right? The old West End in Boston, which included Boston's Scully Square, which was like Boston's equivalent of Times Square. Some people say it was racier than Times Square was.
Huh.
Which was taken down. I mean, it's totally as part of the first really major urban renewal project, taken down in the early 1960s.
And thus we have Government Center.
And thus we have Government Center, right, is where Scully Square was, and right where Government Center stood were 4 or 5 very famous burlesque houses, including the old Howard Theater that once upon a time had been a Millerite temple, the Crawford House. It's also where places like Joe and Nemo's were for any of your old-time viewers. Joe and Nemo's apparently the best hot dogs in the world. All sorts of stuff.
Now there's this West End place, which is right going towards Cambridge Street, where some of the displaced families were able to get
A little
housing
bit.
years later.
A little bit, yeah.
Right. But urban renewal, right? And now, the whole combat zone is gone.
Yes. Yeah, the whole combat zone is gone.
It's more like half Chinatown.
It's half Chinatown, but even Chinatown is losing out to big developments or bad parking lots. They tore down the Gaiety Theater, which was just shame. Really a bamboozle. They claimed that it had water damage and it was terrible. But they've restored the Opera House, which is lovely. The Paramount Theater, an old.
It's Emerson now, right?
Yes, was restored by Emerson. It's part of one of the 2 Emerson theaters, right? There's also the Emerson Majestic.
Then there was the Pilgrim down towards the...
The Pilgrim is, although the bottom of the Pilgrim is gone, the Pilgrim was a classic burlesque house. If you go to a Chinese restaurant called the Emperor's Garden, which is up a flight of stairs, you walk in and you are in the top part of the Pilgrim Theater because the ceilings were so high. So it has these huge vaulted theaters, still very Italianate, right? A lot of angels along with the Phoenix and the Dragon that the new owners have added to it.
Oh.
But you walk in and you say, I'm clearly in a theater. As a matter of fact, a couple years back, one of the perennial guest at the Great Burlesque Exposition is a woman named April March, who used to be known as still is known as the First Lady of Burlesque.
April March, not the girl from the Boston, the Rathskeller from the 70s? Transsexual April March.
No. This
Used
was
to hang out in the rock clubs.
okay. Same name, but no, this is a woman who performed for the Minskys and actually made an early film with Jim Henson, and I mean just had an amazing life. This was a burlesque headliner in the late 50s and early 60s, in through the 70s, and April March. She's a guest every year. She's our legendary guest every year at the Great Burlesque Exposition. And the first time she came to the show in Boston, I took her out to dinner at the Emperor's Garden, and we walked in, and we're upstairs, and she looked around and she said, "This used to be the Pilgrim Theater." And I said, "Yes, April, it did used to be." And she said, "I opened the Pilgrim. I was the first headliner at the Pilgrim Theater." And I said, "Yes, April, I know. That's why we're having dinner here."
That's funny. You actually knew that.
Yes.
Now, across the street was a theater, because as a kid, I used to go in.
Yeah.
My parents used to let me be creative. I'd go in and review my horror movies. And I had a horror fanzine when I was a teenager. So they trusted me enough that I could go in on the bus and see my horror movies and then come home,
Right, sure.
But there was also a beautiful record store, Skippy White's.
Sure. Well, Skippy White's is still around, just not downtown.
Right, it's down in Central Square, I think.
Yeah, right, sure.
Right, but I'd go in and get the Jimi Hendrix on a Little Richard 45.
Yeah,
so
right,
I bought
sure.
it, and
right.
that Jimi Hendrix played with Jane Mansfield.
I didn't know that.
Ed Chalpin, the manager of the band Curtis Knight that Jimmy was in, managed Jane Mansfield. So Jimmy is on one Jane Mansfield track.
Huh.
You can find it on eBay, and it's just fascinating to hear.
Does it sound like Jimi Hendrix?
It's a guitar player.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But he was distinctive, and it hasn't shown up on the box sets yet for Hendrix, but it will eventually because it's classic.
Right. People are completists. Absolutely.
Jane Mansfield, she fall into the burlesque kind of.
Well, it's fun. Some of the songs that she did. I mean, she certainly falls into the general tease universe.
Yeah.
And there's a song that she does that is it's very, very. If you listen to it, you think this is someone trying to capitalize on Chantilly lace. I mean, it's her talking on the telephone to someone, and there's a lot of will I what, and that's that has been used in a number of burlesque routines.
Jane Mansfield's thing. So her daughter went on to fame as Law and Order SVU.
Yes, right, sure.
Which a lot of people don't know. Mariska Hargitay.
Hargitay, sure. Well, Mariska's father, Mickey Hargitay, is also an actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is all rich history that everyone who watches this show
Sure.
needs to know. We've got a few minutes left, and we're going to call Frank Dell'Estrito. So
Okay.
if you go down to that Memorial Drive along the river,
Starro Drive.
Starro Drive. I thought
Well,
the Hyatt Regency.
Oh, the Hyatt Regency, yes, for my festival, yes, sure. It's 575 Memorial Drive. It's the one that looks like a step pyramid.
Right.
Yeah.
And the parking is behind, I would imagine.
There's a big garage, but on the weekends there's a lot of parking in the area.
Oh, right on the Memorial Drive.
Right on Memorial Drive and on the side streets, Vassar Street there, sure.
So this is April
6th, 7th, and 8th. So not this coming weekend, but the weekend after.
Now,
and all of the free classes are on Saturday starting at noon.
Oh, Saturday at noon. Because I'm at the Record Expo at Dedham. Visual Radio tapes it every week because I've been going to this thing for decades. It's 34 years old. The Holiday Inn in Dedham is the first. So the 8th would be the next Sunday.
Right.
So we got the Record Expo this Sunday in Dedham, and your expo is the 6th, 7th, and 8th, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yep. 3 nights of shows, the classes, all sorts of stuff.
A week from tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
don't tell me, I got a lot of work to do.
Old Mr. Scratch here is gonna. So if you want to go for some free classes, Saturday at noon over at the Hyatt, and what's the other free things?
Well, there's an art show. There's a costume exhibit. There's also, like the Record Expo, we've got some vendors selling all sorts of classic stuff. So you can come on by and pick up your lingerie, your souvenirs, all sorts of stuff.
That's pretty good. So
yeah, great stuff.
At the Hyatt of all places, and where is it at the Hyatt? First, second, third?
It's on the first floor in the main ballrooms.
Oh, so the main ballrooms are on the first floor because they've got like a restaurant upstairs that rotates.
They used to. It's not a restaurant anymore.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it's gone.
Oh,
it's gone.
That's
The Spinnaker that used to be up there. Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed your interview here, and I hope you can hang around while we talk to Frank.
Yeah, go right ahead. Sure, be happy to.
And, you know, the door's always open here. You know, if you're videotaping stuff at your event,
Yep.
that sounds like fun stuff for the...
Absolutely. We will be videotaping it, so
Oh, cool.
happy to bring it by. The cleaned up version.
The cleaned up version, I heard
That's
that.
they call the Boston version.
And this is a great writer by the name of Frank Delastrito from Texas. He has books on Bela Lugosi, Vampire Over London.
Okay.
He's
Joe
one of-
Viglione, talking about movies. How you doing, Joe?
Say hi to Mr. Scratch from Daniel Webster, The Devil and Daniel Webster.
Okay, hello, and is that a movie or is that a play or what?
Well, The Devil and Daniel Webster is a short story, and that's where my name comes from. I run the
Okay,
I run the
know
Boston.
It's a short story. I thought maybe you had made it into something.
No, I run the Boston Babydolls, who are a burlesque troupe here in Boston.
All right.
And you are Frank Delastrito, and didn't we talk about Rocket Ship XM before?
Yeah, we showed it a few months ago, and I talked maybe about the science fiction genre. How much time we got?
We've got 9 minutes.
All right, that's an ocean of time. Okay, it's 1950. How many movies can you name made before 1950 where there's a rocket ship in them? And the answer is probably not many. Just off the top of my head, there's the Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers serials.
Sure.
That were late 30s through 1940. There's a rocket ship and Things to Come, and then you got to go back to the silent days, and even then you'd probably have trouble coming up with more than a handful.
Do we do first Men in the
After
Moon?
This movie comes out in June 1950, and then after that, you can fill a book with just the titles of the movies made in the next 10 years with rocket ships in them. So
Scratch through First Men in the Moon at you. Was that in the silent era?
First Men in the Moon, the First Men in the Moon I know of is 1964.
No. There's George Millet, the silent film.
Okay, yeah. A Trip to the Moon.
A Trip to the Moon.
1902. My point being that in the 50 years before Rocket Ship XM, there's probably less movies with a rocket ship in them than there are in the 10 years afterwards, and that's because science fiction was becoming big, and you know the atomic bomb had dropped. Everyone knew space flight was imminent, and in fact, in researching this film, you don't have to research long before you find it really was inspired by a 1949 article in Life magazine talking about space flight and the rocket ship. That they show in the beginning, they show rather detailed plans of the rocket ship, and it's a multi-stage rocket, you know, and no multi-stage rocket had taken off yet, but they knew it was coming. And I think if your viewers will both get a kick out of what they obviously get wrong. They don't know how to handle weightlessness at all. They kind of use it when they feel like it, but then all of a sudden nobody has problems with it. On the other hand, they get certain things right. They have the rocket ship orbit the Earth once to pick up some momentum from the spin, and then before it takes off. So you know, there's some things that they saw coming, and some things that they either didn't get right because they didn't know any better, or didn't get right because they'd rather make a movie that they thought people would understand and enjoy rather than one scientifically accurate.
That makes sense.
At the time, as a movie we spoke briefly of last week is Destination Moon, which came out about 2 or 3 months after this, and that was a bigger budget and a lot more publicity. It got a couple of Academy Award nominations for Best Special Effects. I think it won Best Special Effects that year. It also got some other, art direction awards and all that. And so Robert Lippert, who's one of these interesting guys in film history, he owned a whole bunch of theaters, got tired of paying for the movies, the studios to lease in the movies, so he started making his own. And when he heard about Rocket Ship XM, with Destination Moon coming down the pike, he rushed into production, and in 18 days turned out Rocket Ship XM. Now, when Destination Moon was made, it had no big stars, but the actors in it were better known than the actors in Rocket Ship XM. But at least 3 of them found a lot of fame on television. So now, if your typical viewer may not recognize anybody in Destination Moon, but might recognize a handful of names in Rocket Ship XM. Lloyd Bridges, who was going to become a TV star in Sea Hunt, and Hugh O'Brien, who was going to become a TV star in Wyatt Earp. Noah Berry became a TV star much later in the Rockford Files. So, but these are all just journeymen at the time.
And Jeff Bridges became Starman.
Excuse me?
Jeff Bridges became Starman.
Yes, Lloyd Bridges' son became Starman.
So it runs in the family to a degree. This is 1950. It's 3 years after Roswell. You know, and I wasn't alive then. I don't know how much Roswell caught the attention of anybody at the time, though it certainly became a big deal later. But there's a couple of things in these old movies that raise your interest. Early in the film, the head of the Space Center comes out and addresses the press, and he said, I scribbled this down a few minutes ago, and here's what he said to them. I'm sure we will recall the wild tales of flying discs and flying saucers and spaceships and who knows what other imaginative creations. The press is to be commended in most instances for squelching these premature rumors and so helping to minimize public apprehension. And you know, I wasn't alive then, so I don't know quite what he's talking about. But there's the Man from Planet X, a movie made a year later. At the end of the movie, the spaceman the bad guys are dead, the good guys are triumphant, and one character says to another, "How are we going to keep this quiet?" And the other guy says, "We can't, but we can make it sound like a rumor." In other words, that's how we'll discount it.
Sure.
So if I were a Roswell
Conspiracy theorist.
if I were a conspiracy theorist, I'd say, hey, they're slipping things into these movies to keep people quiet, because it's kind of out of context there. So if your viewers who watch the movie, pay attention to the first 5-10 minutes. There's a lot going on there.
You know, Frank, I think that Hollywood has been slipping innuendo for years to get messages out.
Yeah, so there's a lot of one-liners in there. The only woman in the movie, and the only woman on the spaceship is Una Madsen, who was Danish and had a brief fling in Hollywood a few years before. First Greta Garbo, and then Ingrid Bergman created a real appetite in Hollywood to find the next Nordic beauty, and she was one of them. And she had a couple of movies, but her career was definitely on the wane when this was made, and they picked her up. But I will give her credit that she creates the type of character we see in a lot of the 1950 science fiction movies, and that is the woman scientist who's rather reserved, rather cold, cold-fish, you might say, competent to a fault, somewhat superior to the men. As the movie starts, they're taking their final medical exams, and she's the only one whose blood pressure is normal because they're all so excited. And there's a couple of swipes at her by her boss, who's a man, about, he forgives her for being momentarily a woman and all that. And you see that kind of character popping up again and again, often as the daughter of the scientist. 20 million miles from Earth is one of them, and Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. You can see. I didn't have time to make a full list of.
Even though Lost in Space 10 years ago, they did that with the daughter of Matt LeBlanc.
Yeah.
And the first Star Trek pilot, where they refer to Mrs. Roddenberry there as almost another guy.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So, and it's, usually in the plots they adopt, she falls in love with the more blue-collar pilot, or the more hands-on Air Force general or whatever, officer, who melts her heart, and they fall in each other's arms. Now, for those who think this is a typical Hollywood movie, the ending is kind of a downer. This does not have a happy ending. So be prepared for that. And it kind of hits you both, because they're following all the cliches. Things are going this way, going that way. The two people fall in love that you expect to fall in love, and then all of a sudden, bang! It's not a happy ending. So there you go.
And we have 60 seconds left, Frank.
60 seconds left. In this movie is one of my favorite actors, though you hardly ever see him, and his name is John Emery. He is the chief scientist on the spaceship, and he is in the top 5 of my all-time portrayers of the devil, which he did in an episode of Thriller, where he was a devil who was a pawnbroker who was buying souls instead of selling goods. And he was a very watchable character actor. He's not particularly good in this, because I think he was better when he was a villain or when he was a bit more comic. But he is, he could easily be a man you love to hate, or a guy you could say, wow, I don't want to get on his bad side. Now remember him always as a great television devil. He did that quite well.
And Mr. Scratch can use that for a character analysis for
Right,
his burlesque
for
show.
my own self.
Frank, that's our time. Thanks so much, man.
about suddenly. Bye-bye.
Sounds good. And that's our show for tonight, people. Mr. Scratch, thank you very much for showing up.
My pleasure, Joe.
Say hi to Daniel Webster for us.
I'll do my
Frank
best.
Delastrito. Thank you to Joe LaRocca, Anthony Gamari, and Chris, and everyone here tonight at WinCAM.